She was wearing a faded hoodie, vintage sneakers, and listening to a podcast, hardly the image of a corporate titan. So when Captain Richard Halloway saw Nia Sterling sitting in seat 1A of his aircraft, he didn't see the billionaire aerospace engineer who had just secretly acquired the airline. He saw a problem. He saw someone who didn't belong. What happened next wasn't just a dispute over a seat. It was a brutal collision of arrogance and hidden power that would ground a pilot's career forever. You might think you know how this ends, but trust me, you have no idea. This is the story of the pilot who ordered his own boss to switch seats. The rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of JFK's Terminal 4, blurring the lights of the tarmac into streaks of neon and grey. Inside the exclusive first-class lounge of Stratosphere Global, the atmosphere was hushed, smelling faintly of expensive espresso and leather. Nia Sterling sat in a corner wingback chair, nursing a sparkling water. To the casual observer, the 32-year-old black woman looked like a college student heading home for the holidays. She wore a charcoal oversized hoodie, black leggings, and a pair of beat-up Nike Dunks that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she was scrolling through a PDF on her phone. The PDF, however, wasn't a textbook. It was the confidential acquisition agreement for Stratosphere Global. As of 9 a.m. that morning, Nia Sterling, founder of Sterling Dynamics, a tech firm that revolutionized drone logistics, was the majority shareholder of the airline she was about to fly. Nobody knew. Not the press, not the board of directors, and certainly not the flight crew of Flight SG-402 bound for London Heathrow. Nia had requested specifically to fly this route. The internal audits had shown massive discrepancies in customer satisfaction on the New York to London leg. There were complaints of elitism, delayed departures due to VIP preference, and a general decline in service. Nia didn't govern from an ivory tower. She liked to be on the ground, or in this case, in the air. Flight SG-402 is now boarding first-class passengers at Gate A6, the announcer's voice chimed. Nia picked up her backpack, a simple North Face, not the Louis Vuitton trunks the other passengers were wheeling, and headed to the gate. She scanned her boarding pass at the kiosk. The gate agent, a harried-looking young man named Todd, barely glanced up. "Have a nice flight, Miss Sterling." "Thanks, Todd," she smiled. She walked down the jet bridge, feeling that familiar hum of excitement she always got near aircraft. She loved the engineering, the physics, the miracle of flight. As she stepped onto the plane, she was greeted by the lead flight attendant, a woman named Sarah with a tight smile and tired eyes. "Welcome aboard," Sarah said, her eyes flicking momentarily to Nia's attire before checking her boarding pass. There was a microscopic pause, a hesitation Nia was used to. "Seat 1A, right here on your left." "Thank you," Nia said, slipping into the wide, plush leather seat. She stowed her backpack and settled in. 1A was the prime spot. She pulled out her noise-cancelling headphones, ready to review the engine specs for the Boeing 777-300ER she was currently sitting in. The cabin began to fill. A few businessmen in bespoke suits took seats in row 2. An influencer with a toy dog took 2B. The atmosphere was calm until he walked out of the cockpit. Captain Richard Halloway was a man who looked like he had been cast in a movie about pilots from the 1970s. Silver hair, a jawline that could cut glass, and an air of arrogance that took up more space than the galley. He had flown for Stratosphere for 20 years and acted like he owned the fleet. He stepped out to greet a few of the regulars, high-status flyers he knew by name. He shook hands with Mr. Gentry in 2A. He winked at the influencer. Then he turned to return to the cockpit and stopped dead. He saw Nia in 1A. He frowned, not trying to hide his displeasure. He leaned toward Sarah, the flight attendant, who was arranging champagne flutes in the galley. "Sarah," Halloway said, his voice a low rumble that carried easily in the quiet cabin. "Check the manifest again." "I did, Captain," Sarah whispered. "She's in 1A, Naya Sterling." Halloway turned, staring openly at Nia. She felt his gaze and slid one headphone cup off her ear. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice calm and level. Halloway stepped into the aisle, towering over her. He didn't smile. "Miss, I think there's been a mistake. This is the first-class cabin." "I'm aware," Nia said, holding up her boarding pass. "Seat 1A." Halloway took the pass from her hand without asking, scrutinizing it like it was a counterfeit bill. "Staff travel? Upgrade using miles?" "Full fare," Nia corrected him. "Paid in cash." Halloway scoffed, handing the pass back with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Look, miss, we have a situation. We have a Priority Global Services member, a titanium tier flyer, who is running late. She always sits in 1A. It's her seat." Nia blinked. "It's an assigned seat, Captain. I booked it 2 days ago." "And I'm the captain of this vessel," Halloway said, crossing his arms. The gold stripes on his sleeves caught the cabin light. "I'm responsible for the comfort and safety of all my passengers, especially our most loyal ones. I need you to move." Nia looked around. The cabin was half full. "Move where? Is there another window seat in first?" "First is full," Halloway lied. Nia could clearly see seat 3A was empty. "I have a seat available in premium economy. Row 20. It's an exit row. Lots of legroom." The audacity hung in the air like smoke. He was asking a full-fare first-class passenger to move to economy to accommodate a friend. "I'm not moving, Captain," Nia said, putting her headphone back on. "I paid for this seat, and I intend to stay in it." Halloway's face turned a shade of crimson. He reached down and physically pulled the headphone off her ear. Nia's eyes went cold. "Don't ever touch me again." "And don't you play games on my plane," Halloway hissed, leaning in close so the other passengers wouldn't hear the venom in his voice. "I don't know how you got this ticket. Maybe a boyfriend's credit card, maybe a system glitch, but you don't fit the profile of a 1A passenger. Now, Mrs. Kensington is going to be boarding in 5 minutes. If you aren't out of this seat by then, I'm having security drag you off for failing to comply with crew instructions." He straightened up, adjusted his tie, and marched back into the cockpit, slamming the door. Nia sat there, her heart pounding not from fear, but from a rage she hadn't felt in years. She looked at Sarah, the flight attendant. Sarah looked terrified. She mouthed, "I'm so sorry." Nia took a deep breath. She unlocked her phone and opened a secure messaging app. She didn't text her lawyer. She texted the Chief Operations Officer of Stratosphere Global, a man named David Thorne. Message: "Who is Captain Richard Halloway?" Reply: "David. Senior pilot, union rep, bit of a dinosaur. Why? Are you at the office?" Message: "No, I'm in his seat, 1A, and he just threatened to arrest me." Nia watched the 3 dots of the typing bubble appear, disappear, and appear again. The game was on. 5 minutes passed. The tension in the cabin was palpable. The businessman in 2A was pretending to read the Wall Street Journal, but he was watching Nia over the rim of his glasses. Nia remained still, her posture relaxed, though her mind was racing. She was calculating. This wasn't just about a rude pilot. This was a systemic failure. Halloway felt comfortable enough to bully a passenger because he believed his authority was absolute and unchecked. He was about to learn about checks and balances. There was a commotion at the front of the plane. The heavy thud of footsteps on the jet bridge signaled an arrival. "Richard! Where is he?" a voice shrilled. a woman swept into the cabin in a whirlwind of expensive perfume and entitlement. Victoria Kensington was in her late 50s, wearing a Chanel tweed suit that cost more than most cars. She was dragging a rimless carry-on and clutching a toy poodle that was definitely not a service animal. She stopped at row 1, looking at seat 1A. She looked at Nia, her face twisted in confusion, then distaste. "Excuse me?" Nia didn't look up from her phone. "Richard!" Mrs. Kensington yelled toward the cockpit door. The door opened immediately. Captain Halloway stepped out, a winning smile plastered on his face, a stark contrast to the snarl he'd shown Nia moments ago. "Victoria, so glad you made the connection," Halloway beamed. "I held the door for you." "Richard, what is this?" She gestured a manicured hand toward Nia, as if she were a stain on the upholstery. "Someone is in my seat." Halloway's smile tightened. He turned to Nia. "Miss Sterling, we discussed this." "We did," Nia said, looking up. "And I told you no." Mrs. Kensington gasped. "The insolence! Richard, do you know who my husband is? If I don't get my sleep on this flight, I will be a wreck for the gala in London. Get her out!" Halloway sighed, the theatrics of a man burdened by the incompetence of others. "I'm trying, Victoria. She's being difficult." He turned to Nia, his voice dropping to that dangerous, authoritative register pilots use to quell panic. "Miss Sterling, this is your final warning. You are disrupting the flight crew and delaying departure. Under FAA regulations, that is a federal offense. Grab your bag and move to row 20, or I am calling the Port Authority police." Nia stood up. She was tall, 5'10", and even in sneakers, she held a commanding presence. She looked Halloway dead in the eye. "You're citing FAA regulations?" Nia asked, her voice carrying through the silent first-class cabin. "Regulation 121.5 states that no person may assault, threaten, intimidate, or interfere with a crew member. But it also protects passengers from discrimination and harassment by the crew. You are removing a full-fare passenger to accommodate a non-revenue friend. That is a violation of Stratosphere Global's Code of Ethics, Section 4, Paragraph 2. And frankly, Captain, your breath smells like scotch." The cabin went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop on the carpet. Halloway's face went white, then purple. The accusation of drinking was a career-ender if proven. A nuclear bomb in the aviation world. "How dare you!" he sputtered. "I have been flying for 30 years. "And you might not fly for 31, Nia said calmly. "That is it!" Halloway roared. He grabbed the interphone on the wall. "Tower, this is SG-402. We have a disruptive passenger, requesting immediate law enforcement assistance at the gate." He slammed the phone back into the cradle. "You're done, lady. You're going to jail." Mrs. Kensington smirked, crossing her arms. "Good riddance. People like you always think you can talk your way into places you don't belong." "People like me?" Nia asked, raising an eyebrow. "You know exactly what I mean," Kensington sniffed. "Urban, entitled, probably used a stolen credit card." Nia laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Mrs. Kensington, I could buy and sell your husband's portfolio before breakfast. And as for you, Captain Halloway." She reached into her backpack. "Hands where I can see them," Halloway shouted, stepping back as if she were reaching for a weapon. Nia slowly pulled out a black leather folio. She opened it and extracted a single thick document with a gold seal. She didn't hand it to Halloway. She handed it to Sarah, the trembling flight attendant. "Sarah," Nia said gently, "would you mind reading the header of this document for the captain? Specifically, the transfer of ownership clause." Sarah took the paper, her hands shaking. She squinted at the legal text. "It says..." Sarah's voice wavered, then grew stronger as she processed the words. "It says, asset transfer agreement between Horizon Holdings and Nia Sterling regarding the acquisition of Stratosphere Global Airlines. Sarah looked up, her eyes wide as saucers. She looked at Nia, then at the captain. She owns the airline, Captain. Halloway froze. He looked like he had been struck by lightning. What? Read the signature line, Sarah, Nia said, leaning back against the bulkhead. Signed, Nia Sterling, CEO and chairwoman. Mrs. Kensington laughed nervously. Don't be ridiculous, it's a fake. She printed it off the internet. Look at her. She's wearing a hoodie. But Halloway wasn't laughing. He was staring at Nia. He was looking at the confidence, the specific knowledge of the regulations, the name on the manifest he had ignored. Sterling. The rumor mill had been buzzing about a takeover, about a mystery buyer from the tech world. Ms. Sterling? Halloway choked out. That's Miss Sterling to my friends, Nia said, her voice dropping to icy steel. To you, Captain Halloway, I am the owner, and you just called the police on your boss. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer to the jet bridge. I believe, Nia said, checking her cheap plastic watch, that the authorities are here. But they aren't here for me. She looked at Halloway with a predatory calmness. I think we should let them in, don't you? The heavy, rhythmic thud of boots on the metal jet bridge echoed through the open cabin door like the drumbeat of an execution. The sound sucked the air right out of the first-class cabin. Captain Richard Halloway stood rigidly, his chest heaving slightly. He had committed. He had pulled the trigger. In his mind, the narrative was still salvageable. He was the veteran captain. She was the unruly passenger. The police would see the uniform, see the gold stripes, and they would do what they always did. Remove the problem. Two Port Authority officers squeezed through the doorway. They were imposing figures in dark blue uniforms, rain glistening on their shoulders, radios crackling with static. The lead officer, a man with a buzz cut and a name tag reading Officer Miller, scanned the scene. His hand rested instinctively near his belt, not on a weapon, but ready for physical engagement. Who called it in? Miller asked, his voice flat, bored and dangerous. I did, Halloway said, stepping forward. He projected his command voice, the one he used to talk to air traffic control. Captain Richard Halloway, we have a passenger refusing to vacate a seat assigned to another customer and refusing crew instructions. She has become belligerent and is delaying a transatlantic flight. Halloway pointed a shaking finger at Nia. Nia hadn't moved. She was still leaning back in seat 1A, her legs crossed at the ankles. She looked remarkably unbothered for someone about to be arrested. The document she had given Sarah, the flight attendant, was still trembling in Sarah's hands a few feet away. Officer Miller looked at Nia. He saw the hoodie. He saw the sneakers. Then he looked at Mrs. Kensington, clutching her poodle and looking at the police with an expression of vindicated glee. Ma'am, Miller said to Nia, stepping into the aisle, you need to grab your bags and come with us. We can sort this out on the jet bridge, but you can't stay on the aircraft. Officer, Nia said softly. She didn't stand up. In the unspoken language of power dynamics, staying seated when authority enters the room is usually a sign of submission or absolute dominance. Before I move, I'd like you to look at two things. First, my identification. She slid a sleek, black titanium card from her pocket, her global entry ID, and held it out. And second, Nia continued, her eyes shifting to Sarah, I'd like you to look at the document the flight attendant is holding. It's a notarized acquisition form filed with the SEC this morning. We don't do contract law, lady, the second officer grunted. We do trespassing. It's not trespassing if it's your property, Nia replied. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried a weight that made Officer Miller pause. Halloway let out a scoff, a harsh, ugly sound. "She's delusional, officer. She printed some fake paper. She's probably off her meds. Just get her off my plane so we can push back." "Your plane?" Naya repeated. The question hung in the air. Officer Miller hesitated. He had been a cop at JFK for 10 years. He had seen drunks, drug smugglers, and celebrities throwing tantrums. He had developed a sixth sense for liars, and looking at the woman in seat 1A, his gut was telling him something was wrong. She wasn't acting like a crazy person. She was acting like a person waiting for the staff to catch up. "Let me see the ID," Miller said. He took the card from Nia. He looked at it, then looked at her face. It was a match, Nia Sterling. "And the paper," Miller said, turning to Sarah. Sarah, looking like she might faint, handed the heavy document to the officer. Miller flipped to the back page. He saw the seals. He saw the signature of the previous CEO of Stratosphere Global, a man named Arthur Pendleton, whom Miller had actually met once during a security detail. It looked authentic. Miller looked up at Halloway. "Captain, this document says Ms. Sterling purchased a 51% controlling stake in Stratosphere Global, effective 9:00 a.m. today." "It's a forgery!" Halloway shouted, losing his composure. Sweat was beading on his forehead now. "Don't you get it? She's lying." "Officer," Naya cut in, "ask the captain why he wants me moved." Miller looked at Halloway. "Well, why is she being removed? Is she intoxicated?" "No," Halloway admitted. "Was she violent?" She touched my arm," Halloway lied. "I removed a headphone he physically pulled off my ear," Naya corrected, her voice sharpening. "Check the cabin cameras, officer. It's a 777-300. There's a fisheye lens right above the cockpit door." Halloway paled. He had forgotten the cameras. "So," Miller said, piecing it together. "She paid for the seat?" "Yes," Halloway ground out. "But you want her to move?" "We have a titanium member." Halloway gestured to Mrs. Kensington. "It's standard protocol to accommodate high-value clients." "Actually," Naya said, "Protocol 4B states upgrades occur only if seats are available. You are trying to evict a paying customer for a personal favor. And officer, I'd like to file a formal complaint against Captain Halloway for assault, removing my headphones, and for filing a false police report." The dynamic in the cabin shifted so violently it was almost physical. The hunters became the hunted. Officer Miller handed the document back to Nia. He took a step back, his body language shifting from aggression to neutrality. "Captain," Miller said, his tone different now, harder. "If this lady owns the airline, I can't arrest her for trespassing on her own plane. And if she paid for the ticket, and she's not drunk or violent, you have no grounds to remove her. But she's—" Halloway stammered, pointing at her hoodie. "She doesn't belong in first class." "That," Naya said, finally unbuckling her seatbelt and standing up, "is exactly the attitude that is going to cost you your pension." She stood up to her full height, smoothing out her hoodie. She looked at Mrs. Kensington, who was now clutching her dog so tight the animal let out a small squeak. Then she looked at Halloway. "Officer Miller," Naya said, "thank you for your time. You can stay for a moment. I need you to escort someone off the plane." "But it isn't me." The silence in the cabin was heavy, thick with the realization of a catastrophic error. The rain continued to hammer against the fuselage, but inside, the storm was entirely man-made. Naya turned to Sarah. The flight attendant was pressed against the galley wall, trying to make herself invisible. "Sarah," Naya said gently. "Yes." "Ms. Sterling?" Sarah whispered. "Who is the first officer on this flight?" It's David Wu, ma'am." "Is he rated to captain this aircraft?" "Yes, ma'am. He just finished his upgrade training last month. He's fully certified. Good, Naya nodded. Please go into the cockpit. Tell First Officer Wu that he is now acting captain of Flight SG-402. Tell him to prep the aircraft for departure. We are currently running. She checked her watch. 18 minutes late. You can't do that, Halloway exploded. The reality was crashing down on him. His face was a mask of panic and rage. You can't just replace me. I have a union contract. I have seniority. You're just some girl in a sweatshirt. Nia turned to him slowly. The look she gave him was devoid of anger. It was the look a scientist gives a bacteria sample. Captain Halloway, she said, her voice clear enough for the entire cabin to hear. I am relieving you of duty effective immediately. You are grounded pending a full internal investigation into your conduct, your discrimination against a paying passenger, and the allegation of alcohol consumption prior to flight. I didn't drink, Halloway screamed. You made that up. Then you'll pass the breathalyzer test the Port Authority will administer at the station, Naya said calmly, and the blood test, and the hair follicle test. If you're clean, the alcohol charge drops. But the discrimination charge, the abuse of power, the false police report. She shook her head. You're done, Richard. Halloway looked at the police officers. Do something. She's hijacking my plane. Officer Miller shook his head. Sir, if she's the owner, she's the boss. If she wants you off, you get off. And frankly, sir, I can smell the mouthwash from here. It's pretty strong. Halloway slumped. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. He looked at the passengers, the people he had preened for, the regulars he had tried to impress. Mr. Gentry in 2A was holding up his phone, recording the entire thing. The influencer in 2B was live streaming. Halloway had wanted to be the hero. He was now the viral villain of the week. Grab your flight bag, Captain, Naya ordered. You are leaving. Halloway stumbled into the cockpit. A moment later, he emerged with his heavy leather kit bag. He looked old. He looked defeated. He walked down the aisle, head down, passing the police officers who fell in behind him to ensure he left the secure area. As he reached the door, he paused and looked back at Mrs. Kensington. Victoria, he rasped, I tried. Mrs. Kensington didn't look at him. She was staring out the window, pretending she didn't know him. Halloway stepped onto the jet bridge and vanished into the grey gloom of the terminal. Nia didn't sit down yet. She turned her attention to row 1. Mrs. Kensington was trying very hard to blend into the leather seat. She picked up a magazine, her hands shaking so badly the pages rattled. Mrs. Kensington, Naya said. The woman jumped. She looked up, her face a mask of brittle terror. I didn't know. How could I know? You were dressed so poorly, Naya finished for her. Casually, Kensington corrected quickly. Look, let's just forget this. I'm a titanium member. My husband is... Your husband, Naya interrupted, is a delightful man who runs a hedge fund that is currently underperforming. But this isn't about him. It's about you. Nia walked closer, leaning on the back of seat 1B. You felt entitled to my seat simply because you knew the pilot. You insulted me. You assumed I was a criminal because of my skin color and my clothes, and you delayed 300 people because you didn't want to sit in seat 3A. I have back problems, Kensington whined. And now you're going to have travel problems, Naya said. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen a few times. I'm revoking your titanium status, effectively immediately. Mrs. Kensington gasped, dropping the magazine. You can't. The miles. The lounge access. Gone, Naya said. And I'm placing you on the Stratosphere Global No-Fly list for a period of 1 year, for verbal abuse of a passenger and inciting a disturbance. No fly list? Kensington shrieked. But I have to get to London. The gala. There is a British Airways flight leaving from Terminal 7 in 2 hours, Naya said coldly. I suggest you run. It's a big airport. You're kicking me off? Kensington stood up, clutching her dog. This is an outrage. I will sue you. Officer Miller, Naya called out to the jet bridge. The officer poked his head back in. Yeah? We have one more removal. This passenger has been banned from the airline and is refusing to disembark. Officer Miller sighed, stepping back onto the plane. He looked at Mrs. Kensington. Let's go, lady. Don't make me carry the dog. Mrs. Kensington looked around for support, but the cabin had turned. The businessman in 2A, the one who had watched Naya over his glasses earlier, spoke up. Go on, Victoria, he said. You've held us up enough. With a noise of pure frustration, Mrs. Kensington grabbed her bag. She stormed down the aisle, her high heels clicking furiously. As she passed Nia, she muttered something nasty under her breath. Nia didn't blink. Safe travels, Victoria. When the door finally closed, the silence that settled over the cabin was different. It wasn't tense anymore. It was respectful. Awestruck. Nia sat back down in seat 1A. She put her headphones back on. Sarah, the flight attendant, approached her. She was holding a bottle of Dom Perignon and a crystal flute. Her hands were still shaking, but she was smiling. Miss Sterling, Sarah said. Can I get you anything? To apologize for everything. Nia looked at the champagne. Then she looked at Sarah's exhausted eyes. You were just doing your job, Sarah. You were afraid of him. I understand, Nia said kindly. I'll take a glass of water. And Sarah? Yes, ma'am? Once we reach cruising altitude, bring the rest of the crew to the galley. I want to meet everyone. We're going to make some changes to how this airline treats its people. Yes, ma'am, Sarah beamed. The plane pushed back from the gate. The engines roared to life, a deep, powerful hum that vibrated through the floor. Nia looked out the window as the terminal slid away. She saw a solitary figure standing by the glass in the terminal, watching the plane leave. It was Halloway, his bag at his feet, watching his career fly away without him. Nia opened her PDF again. She had an airline to fix, but first, she had a flight to enjoy. 30,000 feet somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, the cabin of Flight SG-402 had settled into a surreal, rhythmic calm. The Boeing 777-300ER sliced through the cloud layer, the hum of the GE-90 engines providing a white noise blanket that usually lulled passengers to sleep. But nobody in first class was sleeping. Nia Sterling sat in seat 1A, her laptop open. She wasn't looking at spreadsheets anymore. She was looking at the faces of the flight crew, gathered in the small galley at the front of the aircraft. She had requested they come see her one by one, covering for each other in the cabin so the service wouldn't lapse. It was an airborne confessional. Sarah, the lead flight attendant, was pouring Nia a fresh, sparkling water. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, but her eyes held years of accumulated stress. He called it the Halloway rule, Sarah said quietly, her voice barely audible over the engine drone. If he didn't like a passenger, how they looked, how they dressed, or if they just didn't defer to him enough, he'd find a reason to make them miserable. He'd refuse to turn off the seatbelt sign for hours so they couldn't use the restroom. He'd claim the galley coffee machine was broken. Nia listened, her face impassive, though her knuckles were white as she gripped her pen. And management knew? Management loved him, Sarah said, looking down at the floor. He saved fuel. He was always on time until today. And he was the union rep. If we complained, he'd bury us. He'd write us up for uniform violations or insubordination. I've seen 3 good flight attendants fired because they stood up to him. Nia nodded slowly. This was worse than she thought. She hadn't just bought an airline. She had bought a feudal system disguised as a corporation. She was an engineer by trade. She understood that if one gear was rusted, the whole machine would eventually seize. Halloway was rust. "Thank you, Sarah," Nia said. "Things are going to change. I promise you." While Nia was dismantling the toxic culture in the sky, a very different kind of toxicity was brewing on the ground. 3,000 miles away, in a dimly lit bar at the TWA Hotel at JFK, Richard Halloway was on his 3rd scotch. He wasn't wearing his jacket. His tie was loosened. He looked like a man who had survived a crash landing, but the wreckage was his own ego. He was gripping his phone, his thumb hovering over a contact named Gordon Banks, Crisis PR. Halloway knew he was in trouble, but Richard Halloway had survived 3 decades in aviation by being aggressive, not by being apologetic. He knew how the world worked. The truth didn't matter. The narrative mattered, and right now, the narrative was being written without him. He hit dial. "Gordon," Halloway rasped when the line connected. "I have a situation." "I saw the video, Richard." Gordon's voice was slick, fast, and unsympathetic. "The influencer in seat 2B, Chloe Vanderbilt. She posted a TikTok. It has 2 million views in 40 minutes. You look like a maniac." Halloway flinched. "She edited it. She took it out of context." "It shows you screaming at a black woman in a hoodie," Gordon said flatly. "And then the police escorting you off." The caption reads, "Pilot tries to bully billionaire boss, gets instant karma." "You're trending, Richard, and not in a good way." "She provoked me." Halloway slammed his fist on the bar, causing the bartender to glare at him. "Listen to me, Gordon. We need to flip this. She wasn't just sitting there. She was erratic. She refused to show ID initially. She was verbally abusive to the crew before the camera started rolling." "Can you prove that?" Gordon asked. "Who's going to prove me wrong?" Halloway hissed. "She's in the air for another 5 hours. By the time she lands in London, we can own the news cycle. We paint her as an entitled tech brat. New money. Arrogant. She baited a veteran pilot to create a viral moment for her airline launch. It was a publicity stunt that got out of hand." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Halloway held his breath. He needed Gordon to buy in. He needed a weapon. "A publicity stunt," Gordon mused. "The undercover boss angle gone wrong. It plays into the narrative that tech billionaires treat real workers like toys." "Exactly," Halloway said, desperate. "I'm the victim here, Gordon. I was trying to protect the integrity of the first-class cabin for our loyal customers. She humiliated me." "It's risky, Richard. If there's footage..." "There's no footage of the beginning," Halloway lied. He prayed the cockpit voice recorder didn't pick up the conversation in the cabin, knowing full well the door had been open. But he had to gamble. "Just get it out there. Sources say the passenger was intoxicated and belligerent." "Plant the seed." "It'll cost you," Gordon said. "Double my usual rate, and I want a retainer up front." "Done," Halloway said. "Just destroy her." He hung up the phone and finished his scotch. He watched the rain streak the window, staring at the runway lights. He wasn't going down without a fight. He would burn Stratosphere Global to the ground if he had to. Back on the plane, the atmosphere had shifted. The influencer, Chloe Vanderbilt, had purchased the in-flight Wi-Fi package. She was currently live-streaming her reaction to her own viral video. Nia, unaware of the specific storm brewing below, walked to the cockpit. She knocked gently. The door opened. First Officer David Wu turned around. He looked young, barely 30, with focused, intelligent eyes. He looked nothing like Halloway. "Ms. Sterling," Wu said, starting to stand up. "Please, stay seated, Captain Wu," Nia said, emphasizing the title. "I just wanted to check on you. How is the flight path?" "Smooth, ma'am. We're making up time. We caught a strong tailwind south of Greenland. We should land in Heathrow only 10 minutes behind schedule." "Excellent work," Nia said. She looked at the empty seat on the left, Halloway's seat. "I know this is an awkward position for you, David, taking command mid-flight under these circumstances." Wu hesitated, then looked at her with a sincerity that struck her. "Ms. Sterling, can I speak freely? Please. I've been flying with Captain Halloway for 6 months. I've thought about quitting aviation 5 times in those 6 months. He made me feel incompetent. Small. Today, when you stood up to him, it was the first time I remembered why I wanted to fly." Wu smiled, a genuine boyish expression. "So thank you. Whatever happens when we land, thank you." Nia smiled back. "You focus on flying the plane, David. I'll handle what happens when we land." She left the cockpit feeling buoyed. She had done the right thing. But as she returned to seat 1A and finally connected her phone to the onboard Wi-Fi, the notifications hit her like a physical blow. Twitter, trending, Dashka Pilotgate, Dosk Nia Sterling, Dash a toxic billionaire headline, Daily Mail, exclusive, she was drunk and abusive. Sources claim tech heiress, staged viral pilot firing for PR clout. Headline, NY Post, hero pilot grounded by woke CEO in hoodie. Nia stared at the screen. Halloway had moved fast. He wasn't apologizing, he was counterattacking. He was using the oldest trick in the book, dragging a black woman's character through the mud to save his own reputation. Nia felt a cold fury settle in her stomach. She didn't reply. She didn't tweet. She closed her laptop. She needed a war room, and she had exactly 3 hours before landing to build one. London Heathrow Airport is a sprawling city of glass, steel, and concrete. It is a place of transit, but for Nia Sterling, it was about to become an arena. The descent had been textbook. Acting Captain David Wu had greased the landing, the wheels kissing the wet runway so gently the passengers barely felt it. As the plane taxied to Terminal 5, the grey London dawn was breaking. But as the aircraft turned toward the gate, Nia looked out the window. Usually, the tarmac is empty, save for baggage handlers and fuel trucks. Today, there was a cordon, a row of black SUVs, and behind a chain-link fence on the perimeter, a sea of cameras. "Looks like the welcoming committee is here," Nia murmured to herself. Her phone buzzed. It was David Thorne, her COO, who was based in London. Thorne. "It's a circus down here. Halloway's lawyer has been on 3 morning shows already. They are spinning this hard. They're claiming you violated safety protocols and that Halloway was forced to intervene. The stock is down 4% in pre-market trading. I have a car waiting on the tarmac to whisk you away. Do not speak to the press." Nia read the text. She looked at the shivering crowd of photographers. She looked at the headlines accusing her of being a drunk and a bully. If she ran, she looked guilty. If she hid in a tinted SUV, she was just another billionaire disconnected from reality. She typed a reply. "Nia, cancel the car. I'm walking through the terminal. Thorne, are you insane? They will eat you alive." "Nia, let them try. Meet me at the gate. Bring the legal team. And bring the unedited cabin security footage." The plane came to a halt. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Nia stood up. She grabbed her backpack. She pulled her hoodie straight. She wasn't going to change into a power suit. She was going to finish this exactly as she started it, as herself. "Ms. Sterling?" Sarah asked, opening the cabin door. "Are you ready?" "Open it," Nia said. She walked up the jet bridge, the damp English air hitting her face. David Thorne was waiting at the top of the ramp. He was a tall, nervous man in a pinstripe suit, looking pale. "Nia," he hissed, grabbing her elbow. "This is a disaster. The board is freaking out. They want a statement apologizing for the misunderstanding and reinstating Halloway pending an investigation. We need to kill the story." "We are going to kill the story, David," Naya said, walking briskly toward passport control. "But not by apologizing." "You don't understand," Thorne pleaded, matching her pace. "Halloway has released a statement saying he smelled alcohol on you. He's claiming you were belligerent. The union is backing him. They're threatening a strike." "Let them strike," Naya said. "I'd rather ground the fleet than fly with liars." They cleared customs in a private lane, but the exit to the main arrivals hall was looming. Through the frosted glass doors, the flashes of cameras were already visible like lightning storms. "Nia, please," Thorne said. "Use the side exit." Nia stopped. She turned to Thorne. "David, do you trust me?" Of course. But then stand next to me and hand me that tablet." Nia took Thorne's iPad. She checked the file he had loaded, the raw security footage from the cabin fisheye camera. It had audio. "Open the doors," Nia told the security guard. The doors slid open. The noise was instantaneous. A wall of sound hit them, shouting, questions, accusations. "Miss Sterling, was it a publicity stunt? Miss Sterling, were you intoxicated? Why did you fire a hero pilot? Is it true you assaulted the captain?" Nia walked forward. The police held the paparazzi back, creating a narrow corridor. Nia didn't walk through it. She stopped right in the middle of the scrum. She looked for the camera with the red, live light. It was a BBC News crew. The reporter, a woman with a microphone thrust out like a spear, looked surprised that Nia had stopped. "Miss Sterling," the reporter yelled, "Richard Halloway claims you were drunk and abusive, and that you used your wealth to humiliate a working-class pilot. What is your response?" Nia looked directly into the lens. Her face was bare of makeup, her hair still in a messy bun. She looked tired, but her eyes were piercing. "My response," Nia said, her voice calm but projected perfectly, "is that Captain Halloway is counting on you to believe a lie because it fits a stereotype you're comfortable with." The crowd quieted down slightly. They hadn't expected her to speak. "He claims I was drunk," Nia asked. "I have been sober for 5 years. I would be happy to submit to a toxicology screen right now. He claims I was abusive? He claims he is the victim?" Nia held up the iPad. "I think the world should see what heroism looks like to Richard Halloway." She tapped the screen and held it up to the BBC camera. The audio played over the silence of the arrival hall. It was tinny, but clear. Halloway's voice. "I don't know how you got this ticket. Maybe a boyfriend's credit card. You don't fit the profile. Get out of this seat, or I'm having security drag you off." Then the visual of Halloway physically snatching the headphones off Nia's head. The visual of him towering over her, his face twisted in a sneer. The reporters watched. The silence grew heavy. This wasn't a belligerent passenger. This was a bully harassing a quiet woman who was reading a PDF. Nia pulled the iPad back. "He didn't know I owned the airline," Nia said into the microphone. "He just knew I was a black woman in a seat he wanted for his friend. He didn't enforce the rules. He made them up, and when he realized his mistake, he didn't apologize. He lied to the police. And then he called you," she gestured to the press, "to help him destroy my reputation so he could keep his job." She took a step closer to the camera. "Stratosphere Global is under new management, and under my leadership, we don't bully passengers, we don't lie to the police, and we certainly don't employ pilots who think they are gods. Captain Halloway isn't just fired. I am suing him for defamation, and I am filing a formal complaint with the FAA to have his license revoked for filing a false police report." She looked around the stunned circle of reporters. Any other questions? There were none. The narrative hadn't just shifted, it had evaporated. Halloway's story was dead on arrival. "Let's go, David," Naya said. She turned and walked through the parting crowd, head high. David Thorne scrambled to catch up, a look of absolute awe on his face. "Remind me," Thorne whispered as they reached the waiting car at the curb. "Never to play poker with you." "I don't play poker, David," Naya said, sliding into the back seat of the Mercedes. "I play chess." And he just lost his queen. But as the car pulled away into the London traffic, Nia didn't celebrate. She looked out the window at the grey sky. She knew Halloway was finished, but men like him didn't go quietly. He was cornered, humiliated, and exposed. And a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. Her phone buzzed again. It wasn't a news alert. It was a direct message from an unknown number. "You think this is over? You have no idea who you just messed with. Watch your back in London." Nia stared at the text. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "David," she said softly. "Yes, Nia? Call my security detail. Double the guard at the hotel." "Why?" "We won." "We won the battle," Naya said, locking the screen of her phone. "But I think the war just got personal." The Stratosphere Global Annual Gala at the Savoy Hotel in London was supposed to be a celebration of the merger. Instead, it felt like a wake. The ballroom was filled with nervous board members and executives whispering about the viral video and the plummeting stock price. Nia Sterling stood at the podium. She had traded her hoodie for a sharp, emerald green evening gown, but she wore the same steely expression. She hadn't slept. The threatening text message from the unknown number was burned into her mind. "Ladies and gentlemen," Naya began, her voice echoing in the silent hall. "Change is turbulence. It shakes us. But it is the only way to climb." Suddenly, the heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom crashed open. Security guards scrambled, but they weren't fast enough to stop the man who stumbled in. It was Richard Halloway. He was unrecognizable. His pilot's uniform was gone, replaced by a rumpled suit. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, and manic. "You!" Halloway screamed, pointing a shaking finger at the stage. "You stole my life!" The room gasped. David, the COO, moved to shield Nia, but she held up a hand. She didn't flinch. She watched Halloway limp down the center aisle, a fallen king in a court that no longer recognized him. "You ruined me over a seat!" Halloway shouted, slurring his words. "I gave 20 years to this company. I am a captain. And you're just a lucky little girl." He reached into his jacket pocket. Panic rippled through the room. People screamed, diving under tables. Security drew their weapons. "Stop!" Nia commanded, her voice cracking like a whip. Halloway froze. He pulled his hand out. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding his pilot's wings, the gold pin he had worn on his chest for 2 decades. He threw the pin at the stage. It clattered feebly on the floor, nowhere near Naya. "Take it," Halloway sobbed, his rage collapsing into pathetic despair. "That's what you wanted, isn't it? To strip me of everything?" Nia walked down the steps of the stage. The security detail tried to stop her, but she pushed past them. She walked until she was 2 feet from Halloway. She smelled the stale scotch on him. "I didn't strip you of anything, Richard," Naya said, her voice low and sad. "You did this. You thought your stripes made you superior. You thought your title gave you the right to belittle people. You weren't protecting the airline. You were protecting your ego." "I sent you a warning," Halloway hissed, leaning in, his eyes full of malice. "I told you to watch your back." "I know," Naya said. She nodded to the back of the room. 2 officers from Scotland Yard stepped out from the shadows. They had been tracking the burner phone Halloway used to send the threat. "Richard Halloway," the officer announced, grabbing his arms. "You are under arrest for harassment, making terroristic threats, and filing a false police report." As they dragged him away, Halloway looked frantically around the room for an ally. His eyes landed on a table near the front. "Victoria, help me," he pleaded. Mrs. Kensington sat there, clutching her pearls. She looked at the man who had ruined her day, then looked at the powerful billionaire standing on the stage. She turned her head away, taking a sip of her wine. The doors closed. The silence returned. Naya bent down and picked up the gold pilot wings from the floor. She walked back to the podium and placed them on the lectern. "We are going to melt these down," Nia said into the microphone. "And we are going to forge a new pin, one that represents service, not status. The flight continues. Who is with me?" Slowly, Sarah, the flight attendant who had been invited as a guest of honor, stood up and clapped. Then David stood. Then the board. Soon the entire room was thundering with applause. Nia smiled for the first time in 24 hours. She was the pilot now, and the sky was finally clear. Nia Sterling didn't just win a seat. She won the war for dignity. In a world where people like Captain Halloway and Mrs. Kensington rely on titles and appearances to push others around, Nia proved that true power isn't about how loud you yell. It's about knowing exactly who you are. She turned a moment of humiliation into a movement that changed an entire industry. Halloway lost his career not because he made a mistake, but because he refused to see the humanity in the person sitting across from him. It's a powerful reminder. Never judge a book by its cover, or a passenger by their hoodie. Wow, what a journey. I want to know what you would have done in Nia's shoes. Would you have revealed your identity immediately, or would you have waited to see how far the captain would go? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss out on our next real-life drama story. We have a crazy story coming next week about a landlord who tried to evict a tenant, unaware he was the judge hearing his case. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.